A very good morning, it's Fabio, and EURUSD has been pushing in towards the downside for the past 3 days. Now, in today's video, we're going to dive into the major dollar pairs, gold, and see what trades we can potentially take. As you know, my September is pretty much done. The only thing that I'm currently focusing on is passing new prop firm challenges. So let's see if we can get a few trades in to pass those challenges. Now, EURUSD is in a bullish and impulsive phase, guys. As we can clearly see, we had the overall leg in towards the highs. We had the overall tracement in towards the downside. We took out this bump in the road, which was liquidity. And from there, and the 0.5 fib, we have been pushing further in towards the upside, right? So we've seen that the new impulsive phase started, which was this overall green zone here. And then once we broke market structure here to the upside, what happened? Well, EURUSD pretty much straight away retraced in towards the lows. Now, EURUSD is currently still in its overall impulsive phase, so it's back underneath the overall break of structure line. So ultimately, we can look for continuation trades in towards the highs. And in addition to that, the overall daily fractal structure, so the sell for the big buy up, and if I just add in the overall fractal structure indicator, what you're going to be able to see here is that the current fractal low, and I hope it's clear enough for you guys, but the overall fractal low is positioned over here with the fractal high being positioned over here. So on top of that, what I've done is I've drawn in the overall premium versus discount tool, and then what you're able to see here is that also on the daily fractal structure, we were traced in towards discount pricing. So from a 4-hour perspective, it makes sense for EURUSD to continue pushing in towards the highs as we are overall swing bullish and we are overall fractal bullish. Now looking at the 4-hour time frame, what can we see there? Well, we can see that the swing structure is also bullish because after seeing a break of structure here in towards the highs and then another break of structure here in towards the highs, we can now obviously conclude here that this is your overall 4-hour swing low and this is your overall 4-hour swing high. So we're currently trading at discount pricing, and therefore it makes sense to look for a further impulse in towards the highs. Now, what we've seen here is that the overall impulsive phase took place. So what I mean with the overall impulsive phase is that, let's say, the uptrend continued. Then after that, we saw a, let's say, retracement phase, which we are currently in at this very moment. And now what you're ultimately going to be looking for is another impulsive phase, potentially back up in towards the highs. Now, when is it likely that this next impulsive phase is then ready to start? Well, we look for two things. First of all, we identify liquidity. So what we need to identify are our liquidity lows. So for example, here on EURUSD, I would never ever look for a long from this area of demand because in the overall impulse in towards the highs for the rest, there's no liquidity. So that's why I marked out this little blue line over here as my liquidity low. And then once that gets taken out, then we can potentially start looking for a long. Now, personally, I'm still favoring one lower level, which is this over here. So there are two kind of like X's on this chart. We have the one that I just marked out over here, but we also have this one over here. And ultimately, what you want to see is you want to see EURUSD continue its overall uptrend from either one of these lows. So what do we need then for the next uptrend in towards the highs? Well, obviously, we've now retraced in towards, let's say, this hammer candle over here, which is this imbalance. And then underneath the other liquidity low, we still have this sell for the buy candle as well. So either one of these demand zones has now the potential to push EURUSD further in towards the highs. The only other thing that you need is kind of like a double fractal structure shift to confirm that EURUSD wants to head up higher for the rest of this week. So those are the two trades that I'm looking for on EURUSD, longs from either one of these orange zones. However, there is one big thing potentially holding back those EURUSD longs, and that is the dollar index, guys. Now, what has happened to the dollar index? Well, the dollar index has obviously throughout the entirety of the year seen an impulse in towards the downside, an overall dump in towards the lows ever since January. We can see that the dollar index since January is pretty much down around 12.5%. Now, at some point in time, there is going to be a rebound on the dollar where we're going to see massive buys flow into this market. So what do we need for those buys then to flow into the market? Well, we need an overall reversal pattern. A reversal pattern similar to what we saw on GBPUSD, which caused it to sell off, where we, for example, here saw the one high, the second high, the third high coming into an overall liquidity high, which was this blue dotted line, and then we saw a strong sell-off in towards the downside. Now, I'm looking for something similar here on the dollar index, where we had an overextended move in towards the lows, and then what we've been seeing is a one low, a second low, and now we've seen a fake out on the second low, which is often a sign that the market is ready to reverse. Now, reversal patterns come in two forms, guys. When you have a descending channel, you want to look for the 1, the 2, and the third trendline touch. That is kind of like the theory behind it. And then the second option is that you get a 1, a 2, and then a fake out on the second low without ever making that third trendline touch. But a fake out on the second low is enough, and then from there you reverse in towards the highs. Now, this is the basic concept of a reversal pattern. So what we've now seen here on the dollar index is that that has happened. We've seen a fake out on that second low after seeing that descending corrective price action. And what further kind of contributes to the overall potential, let's say, next impulse up here on the dollar index is the fact that we've been leaving behind so many descending highs, right? So much liquidity has been building up all the way in towards this first X and this second X, and the second X is still an NFP high back of the 1st of August. Now, the way that I view the dollar here is kind of like more as a range where we've now liquidated the overall range low, and we're potentially looking for the dollar to reverse back up towards the overall range high after faking out on that second low. So that is what is holding me back on EURUSD longs. But guys, the overall daily time from here still remains fractal bearish, and in addition to that, we're still inside the daily order flow. So for those longs on the dollar to play out, I would only be really looking for the longs once we break above this order flow piece, and then I'll be happy to long it back up towards the overall NFP high, and then there's still going to be more than enough room to capitalize on those potential dollar longs. So on your USD, I'm kind of looking more for a long position to hedge my potential GBPUSD shorts, which are a little bit more in line with what I'm looking for from the dollar. Now, GBPUSD shorts come from a very, very, very simple kind of like idea or trade idea, where overall what we have been seeing is, again, the 1, 2, 3 in towards this blue dotted line, which is a bump in the road / liquidity. So once that bump in the road / liquidity got taken out, what did we see? We saw an overall impulsive phase form in towards the downside. Now, with that impulsive phase, we saw a break of structure because the overall market structure on the daily was a push up, a pull back, a push up, and then boom, one strong impulse in towards the downside. Now, within that impulse in towards the downside, there were two little bumps in the road acting as liquidity, this one here and this one here. Now, when we took out the first one, we saw a strong push in towards the downside of around 200 pips. And now we've come back up to the very first one. And again, we've seen another dump of around 220 pips in towards the downside. And in addition to that, a bearish daily fractal structure shift. So that now means that the daily is swing bearish, but also the daily is fractal bearish. So what I'm looking for here on your USD, or GBPUSD, excuse me, is for a retest and then the overall continuation in towards the downside, because in addition to the fact that the daily swing is bearish and the daily fractal is bearish, we also have equal lows here that we could potentially target as liquidity. So I'm looking this beginning of the week for a push up here on GU, and then I'll be looking for the sell, and then to kind of like hedge that overall position. Let's see what EURUSD gives us in regards to confirmation, because then we could take a GU sell and an EU buy. And then, for example, what I would do is I would take them on two different separate accounts with two different prop firms. And then on the one prop firm, we'll see how EU plays out. And on the other, we see how GU plays out. And then, for example, we take a 1 to 3 risk to reward with 2% risk. Then on one account, maybe you don't know how it will go, but let's say EU hits stop loss. EU would be a -2 loss, but then we still make 6%, aka 4% on net on GU sells. So that's kind of like what I'm looking to do this week if we get confirmation. So now that you guys know kind of like what I'm looking for on the daily, what I'm looking for on the 4 hour then would ideally be this, where we retrace back up to this bump in the road, because obviously if we look at the 4 hour time frame, this here is a break of structure up, right? So that would mean that this was then the swing low. Now we've broken the swing low in towards the downside. That means swing high, swing low here on the 4 hour. So what you want to see is pretty much the market retrace towards the 0.5 fib. Now, where is the 0.5 fib pretty much located? Well, we have this bump in the road there right below it. So I'm looking for GU maybe to buy up at the beginning of the week, come in towards this bump in the road, and then throughout the rest of the week, look for kind of like continuation trades in towards the downside. Now, this is obviously the perfect scenario, but if there is more momentum, what I'll be looking for is just for this little bump in the road here to get taken out on the 1 hour time frame. See how the 1 hour reacts there, and then maybe already with momentum, we can look for potential selling opportunity in towards the downside. I'm not looking at kind of like this supply zone. This supply zone, note for me, really the X needs to be taken out, or the X over here, to then look for further shorts in towards the downside. So that is the only short that I'm looking for there on GBPUSD. Going into AUDUSD, what are we seeing here? Well, AU has just continued to sell off in towards the downside. Again, pretty much in line with what we wanted to see towards the 0.5 fib. For now, I'm just focusing on short-term downside movements, but obviously the overall downside push has already happened, so you're not going to get into a sell over here when you've already made a around 130 pip move in towards the lows. So what we need to see now is some reaccumulation happen on AU, but I'm not a big fan personally. For me, what can I say? Like, the overall swing structure here is bullish in towards the highs, and we're currently in the pullback phase. So let's wait for the pullback phase to end and for some more bullish momentum to come in, and then I'll look to capitalize on AU again. But I'm more focusing on EU and GU at the moment, as I find them slightly cleaner. Then NZDUSD has been pushing in towards the downside within the impulsive phase. With NU, I'm also looking for shorts, favoring shorts. All I can say here, again, is that the overall idea / analysis has been playing out, break of structure in towards the downside, and then what we had here was the overall swing high, and here we had the overall swing low. So we had an overall impulsive phase towards the lows here, and now again we had a massive pullback phase, which was for around, let's see, 26 days, so around a month, and now we're back inside of the impulsive phase. And you can see the impulsive phase has only been pretty much going on for around, what is it, for not even a week, or for around a week. So you can see that the impulsive phase, that's where a lot more money is to be made, because the markets move a lot more faster if you then trade in line with the overall, let's say, downtrend, right, that we've been seeing. So it's always ideal to wait for the impulsive phase when looking for shorts, for example, like here. So now with NZDUSD, what do you want to be looking for? You want to be looking for reaccumulation / liquidation event. So I would preferably want to see kind of like a range here start to form, where we then liquidate some highs, and then we could look for a downside continuation trade again. But I'm not just going to get into a sell over here, and I'm definitely also not going to get into a buy, because the immediate kind of like, order flow / momentum is in towards the downside, so it would make sense to look for a buy here. So I'm only looking for sells here on NU, but I would need price to reaccumulate to look for a sell. So that's why NZDUSD is just not interesting at the moment. Then USDCAD, USD Yen, USD Swiss, and then of course gold. USDCAD has been pushing in towards the highs again as of this morning. For myself, USDCAD is in a range. I'm not very interested in trading this. You can clearly see this kind of like stuck inside of here. So what you're kind of sticking to here is the extremes of the range, where we stick to the 75% to look for sells, and we stick to the 25% to look for buys. Now you can see here that 25% level got retested to absolute perfection. And then from there, we bought up back in towards the highs as of this morning. Now, for myself, for buys, I'm mainly focusing on taking out these 3 equal lows here. That's the only kind of like buy that I would be looking for at the moment. And for sells, I would only be sticking to kind of like the extreme of the range. And inside the middle of the range, I'm not looking to really trade. USDJPY is a good example of the range trade, where we came in towards the overall swing low over here on the 14th of August, and we liquidated that with FOMC, or with the interest rate decision, and then we saw a 4-hour change of character bullish in towards the highs. I called that we could have taken buys, and it's been playing out nicely. So now obviously for sells, what do we want to see? We want to see the top of the range get hits again before we can look for a proper sell, because there's still so many lows or highs, open. And then USD Swiss, that has pulled back up in towards where, well, if we look at USD Swiss here, and you can kind of see I still have the green zone drawn in. We're currently in the impulsive phase. However, the end of the impulsive phase was near. USD Swiss is very similar to EURUSD in the sense that we're kind of back within and underneath the break of structure line. We're now here within the overall buy before the sell. So inside of here, you can obviously look for kind of like the next selling opportunity to trade in line with the overall trend. Preferably, I would see this high here get taken out before looking for the next sell down. So take out that high. So maybe see another push up, and then look for the change of character, and then kind of like trade the next impulse down. That could be a potential trade. Not looking to really trade this overall supply zone here, just because it's built on so many descending highs. So we really want to take out this bump in the road here. This high here is strong because it took out this high here to the left. So let's see if we can get a liquidation of this high, and then a change of character, and then look for the sell. Otherwise, I would just stay out of USD Swiss, because the overall order flow could just continue bullish here, where this demand is in control, pushes up, and then just continues up higher and higher. So really wait for confirmation after liquidating that high. And for gold, I'm just looking for continuation trades in towards new highs. You can kind of see what I mentioned in last week's video, where we're just looking for the break of structure. That happened, and we continued up higher. Now, overall, again, what you're looking for in gold is just for liquidation events and then continuation trades. So when we look here, for example, at the 1 hour time frame, you're looking here at, let's say, this low. If it were to liquidate that low, let's say today, then you can look for longs again. So that's as simple as it needs to be on gold. You just need to look for liquidations of the overall ascending lows here of price when it's impulsing. So again, for example, this low here is interesting as well. So we just want to look for a pullback on gold and then look for long continuations once either one of the lows gets taken out. As simple as that. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Any questions, just let me know inside Discord, link in the description of this video. Thanks.